I was sitting in the dimness of my office when it all began, a case unlike any other. A name whispered on secret forums, in dark virtual rooms that few dare to enter. Alpha02, a ghost of the dark web, a spectre whose legend was woven between lines of code in the electronic shadows. To many, he was just a myth. To me, he had become an obsession. I spent nights trawling through the most dangerous forums, tracking that name, that pseudonym that seemed to defy all laws. Alpha02 was more than a criminal. He was an idea, a kind of sinister melody, haunting the darkest corners of the internet. People said he was the king of vendors, the one who never made mistakes. The products always arrived on time, always of the best quality, always with that signature, a simple A, understated, yet menacing. Alpha02 was a key figure on clandestine markets like AlphaBay, a massive dark web black market where drugs, weapons, forged documents, and all kinds of illegal goods were traded. Transactions were done exclusively in bitcoins, that virtual currency that ensured anonymity and made tracing transactions complex, if not impossible. The amounts of money involved were astronomical, and Alpha02 was at the heart of this vast trade. Rumors linked him to drug cartels, claiming he managed transactions for massive quantities of narcotics, making him a major player in global trafficking. It was said that Interpol and other international crime-fighting agencies had tried, without success, to locate him. His methods were sophisticated, using private networks, advanced cryptographic techniques, and anonymization systems like Tor to mask his presence. To the authorities, Alpha02 was not just a drug dealer, he was a digital crime genius, capable of blending into the web's labyrinthine depths without leaving a trace. I remember the first time I saw his name appear on a forum. A message, short, almost trivial, posted between two exchanges of ephemeral codes and information. It comes from Alpha02. Everyone knew what that meant. It meant it was time to close your eyes and look away, to let it happen, because trying to oppose him was too dangerous. In the weeks that followed, I began to track his transactions. Bitcoin accounts I traced, addresses he used, always different, never predictable. Every time I thought I was getting closer, he vanished, like an evanescent shadow. I started to immerse myself in his world, to understand his methods. The anxiety grew with every click of the mouse, every sleepless night spent chasing this ghost. Then one night, a message addressed to me. "You're looking for Alpha02, be careful what you wish for." I felt my blood run cold. I didn't know who had written it, but they knew I was hunting him. It was as if suddenly the roles had reversed, as if I had become the prey, and Alpha02 the hunter. The pressure kept growing, but the urge to know was too strong. Who was he really? A criminal mastermind, or just a man on the edge, trying to control everything with a click? My nights were haunted by dreams of black screens and endless codes. I saw blurred silhouettes, featureless faces, voices whispering "Alpha, Alpha," until I woke up in a sweat, my heart pounding. And then, one day, everything stopped. No more traces, no more transactions, nothing. Alpha02 was gone, as if he had never existed. But deep down, I knew he was still there, somewhere in the shadows, watching. A ghost who had managed to fade into the darkness. I should have felt relieved, but it was the opposite. The story of Alpha02 wasn't over, I knew it. Maybe I would never find him again, but I knew he was still there. Like a part of me I could never forget. And every time I connect, every time I dive into these digital depths, I can't help but think that one day our paths will cross again. And on that day, I will be ready. That day came sooner than I thought. It was a moonless night, rain pounding against my office windows. The dull sound of raindrops on the glass soothed me, almost like a lullaby. But this time, insomnia held me firmly. I decided to connect to one of those forgotten forums, one last time before leaving this story behind. I wasn't looking for anything specific, just a way to prove to myself that it was really over. But what I found made me shiver. A message, simple, unsigned, posted only a few hours earlier. "The ghost is coming back. Be ready." My instinct screamed at me to stop everything, unplug the computer, leave this mystery in the darkness where it belonged. But another part of me, the part that had been haunted by Alpha02 for months, was even more determined. I started digging. The clues were scarce, but not non-existent. A recently activated account on a site I thought had been inactive for years. A seemingly innocuous IP address somewhere in Eastern Europe. Everything pointed to a return, a resurgence. It felt like being dragged back months, but this time the tension was different. I was no longer the one seeking understanding. This time I wanted to stop him. The following days were a whirlwind of data, late-night connections, discreet exchanges with contacts I thought I had forgotten. Alpha02 was coming back, and he seemed to know I would be there, on his trail. The cryptic messages multiplied, as if he was playing with me, a cat-and-mouse game whose ending I wasn't sure I wanted to know. Then one morning, as dawn barely broke through the curtains, another message. "Stop digging or you won't like what you find." It was clear, unambiguous, a direct threat. But there was something more. An invitation. As if he wanted me to continue, as if he needed this chase as much as I did. I felt a mix of excitement and fear. It was no longer just an investigation, it had become personal. I knew this story could only have one end. I had to confront him, discover who he really was. The game intensified, and every step I took in this digital maze brought me closer to the truth, or perhaps my own destruction. But no matter what, I knew one thing. I wouldn't give up. Not now. Not after everything I had been through. Alpha02 was waiting for me, and I was ready to plunge into the darkness to find him. It was on an especially silent night that I finally found what I was looking for. A back door into a private network, a kind of flaw that few could have seen. It was like a keyhole, a window into the wolf's den. My heart pounded as I clicked, my fingers trembling, every fiber of my being telling me to prepare for the worst. What I discovered was as terrifying as it was unexpected. Behind the lines of code at the end of this chase, I didn't find a criminal mastermind in a sophisticated technological hideout. This wasn't a Hollywood action movie. What I found was a dingy apartment, somewhere in a grey, forgotten city. The details emerged, images from hacked surveillance cameras, intercepted conversations. Everything pointed to a man, alone, surrounded by screens and cables, with walls covered in scribbled notes, illegible diagrams. Alpha02 was a broken man trapped in a universe he had created himself. A genius, no doubt, but consumed by paranoia, fleeing from real or imagined enemies. His cryptic messages suddenly took on a different meaning. It wasn't just an invitation to hunt him, it was a cry for help, desperate, veiled behind cold arrogance. I realized at that moment that this man was just as much a victim as anyone else, a victim of his own talent, his own darkness. I stayed there, staring at the screen, realizing that the ending I had imagined would never come. It wasn't an explosive confrontation, nor a heroic triumph. It was the sad reality of a life spent running, hidden behind pseudonyms and walls of code, a life without rest, without light. I knew I could report him, that I could press a button and end it all, but I also knew that wasn't the ending he wanted, nor the one I truly sought. I disconnected, slowly, leaving behind this man, this ghost. Alpha02 was real, but he was no longer a threat. He was a human being, lost in the vastness of his own network, a tragic figure hidden behind a screen. And I stayed there, in front of my computer, aware that sometimes the monsters we hunt are nothing more than distorted reflections of our own fears. The rain kept falling, and the night seemed darker than ever. But this time, I felt strangely free. Alpha02 was still out there, somewhere, but I no longer needed to find him. The mystery remained, but it was tied to the raw, harsh reality of the human condition. And maybe that was better. In reality, Alpha02's story didn't end like a noir novel. Shortly after my decision to disconnect, the authorities made a decisive breakthrough. Thanks to international cooperation between Interpol, the FBI, and other crime-fighting agencies, an entire network of vendors on the dark web was dismantled. Among them, Alpha02, or rather the man behind the pseudonym, was arrested during a coordinated operation in Eastern Europe. It was revealed that Alpha02, whose real name was Anton Markovich, was a former computer engineer who had become a key player in international drug trafficking. For years, he orchestrated transactions worth millions of dollars, delivering narcotics and weapons to all corners of the world without ever leaving the safety of his dark apartment. He was haunted by the fear of being discovered, and this constant paranoia led him to a reclusive existence, fueled by the illusory power that the dark web provided him. Anton Markovich was extradited and tried for a long list of crimes, including his involvement in drug trafficking and money laundering through cryptocurrencies. His sentence was severe, but for many the mystery of Alpha02 remained. Authorities managed to dismantle part of his network, but other ghosts continue to haunt the dark web, and Alpha02's shadow still inspires fear and respect among those who continue their illicit activities. For me, the mystery was solved, but the sense of incompleteness lingered, because even though the man had been captured, the idea lived on. Alpha02 was more than an individual. He was the product of a limitless digital world where shadows are never fully dispelled. A reminder that despite apparent victories, the fight against the unseen is never ending. This story is based on real events. If you enjoyed listening to it and want to discover more fascinating stories, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Mysteries, investigations, true stories, it's all waiting for you. Subscribe and dive into the unknown with us.